Okay, so today is day 3 and I'm going to show you guys how to add the zipper to the waistband pocket and then do the back yoke piece and the side seams. So there's another video for adding the zipper. I'll go ahead and link that one. And then to add the back yoke, I have my double pleat back and I've top stitched each of these pleats so that they lay nice and flat. It's better to do it this way before you add the back yoke. Then you can get this top stitch as high as you can up into this raw edge. So take your back yoke piece, which is just that piece that's going to sit right above your booty, and then you're going to do right sides together, and the edge that has these two tails, the longer edge, is going to connect with the raw edge of the lower back piece. And then you can just clip those together all the way down. I'll do the ends first and then work my way towards the center. And then once you have the back yoke attached to the lower back piece, you can go ahead and stitch it at the seam allowance, and then we're going to top stitch it. So I'm going to stitch it on my serger, and then I will top stitch it on my sewing machine. Alright, so just like that. Okay, so I went and serged it. You can see my serged edge right here. And then if you flip it up, you can just top stitch right along this right here. I like to do it on the yoke side. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to use a longer straight stitch. Alright, so you could also do that on your cover stitch if you wanted. My cover stitch and I don't always get along, so sometimes it's just easier to do it on the sewing machine. And now I have these basting stitches that are in here. I could rip those out. I'll rip those out later. But you can rip them out now if you want. And then we're going to take the front skirt piece and lay them right sides together again. And you notice the front skirt piece is a little bit wider on the bottom. So just take the more narrow part and that goes towards the top. And then lay them right sides together. And we're just going to stitch down the sides after we clip it. If you are doing the scrunch side option with the drawstrings, you're going to want to sew this part on your sewing machine because we need to use the seam allowance. And then if you're just doing the regular option, you could do it on your serger because we don't need to be using the seam allowance. So if you're doing the double pleat option, make sure that you're catching that second pleat in the side seam. So clip that all the way down, and then we'll do the other side. All right. So go ahead and sew this, and then I will show you what to do if you are doing the side tie option. Okay, so now the side seams are sewn, and you see we caught that second pleat on there on both sides, so it's just laying nicely down. Okay, so for the option with the scrunched up sides with the ties, you're going to cut 2 additional pieces of fabric for the ties. Mine are 1 inch wide by, this is of about a yard. So then fold them right sides together, and then I just went ahead and serged down the raw edges, and that created a 1/4 inch wide tie after I turned it, and I just turned it with a safety pin. So that was easy, and you'll need 2 of those. So for this option, we're going to be using the lower back piece that does not have any pleats. So in the day 1 video, I showed you how to create that new lower back piece by folding all of the pleats into the pattern piece and then cutting a new pattern piece. That's the piece you're going to be using, and then we have the back yoke piece as well. So again, we're going to fold these on top of each other with right sides together, the back yoke and the lower back piece, and then clip all the way down, and then you're going to sew these ones together. All right, so that's clipped. Now we're just going to sew again right along this seam. Okay, so after you have the lower back piece attached to the upper back piece, you can top stitch. I did this fancy stitch on my sewing machine over that edge right there, or over the seam, and then we're going to go ahead and hem the front piece and the back piece. So I serged along the bottom, and then I'm going to hem 1/2 inch. I didn't lengthen this pattern, and I am 5'10" or 5'11", so I find that hemming 1/2 inch gets it just about the right length for me. So clip all the way down whatever hem amount you want to do, and then you can press it if you want, and then go ahead and hem it, the front piece and then the back piece. Alright, so now we have the front and the back, they are hemmed. We are going to put these pieces right sides together, and now we're going to be doing the side seams. And we are going to be sewing at 5/8 of an inch. Make sure you do it on your sewing machine, not on your serger, because we do have to use that seam allowance afterwards. So I just clip all the way down the side and then sew that at the 5/8 of an inch. And I'm just using a zigzag stitch. You could use a triple stretch stitch if you wanted, or the lightning bolt stitch. Or any of them will work just fine. And if you wanted to finish your raw edges before we did the side seams, you can definitely do that as well. The tricot doesn't fray, so I don't find it necessary, but if you want a cleaner finish, that's definitely an option. The side seam sewn. Now we are going to take the seam allowance that we just did, and fold it open. You see, like this. And then what we're going to do is sew the seam allowance down. So where over the raw edge right here, you're going to sew that all the way down so the seam allowance is open and you have like 2 tubes. And you're going to do that all the way up to the top until you get 1 inch from the top. So you could mark, I don't have my marker over here, but with a clip or a pen, whatever you want to do, 1 inch from the top. So sew the seam allowance down all the way from this 1 inch point all the way down to the bottom on both sides. Okay, so I sewed the seam allowance down all the way to the bottom from 1 inch from the top. So if you turn it over, you'll see we have this 1 inch piece. You're going to take some scissors and trim the seam allowance down to about half. So we'll cut that out. You should probably use bigger scissors. These ones are not super great for this. So trim the seam allowance down to about half, and then you can feed your drawstring through. So you want to take your drawstring, feed it in through this bottom, all the way up, and then across, and then down the other side. So then it will look like this. Then you can tie it on the bottom and decide how long you want it. And it's just going 1 inch from the top on this side, so we can still attach the waistband without any issues. Okay, so the last option we're going to be going over is the gathered back. So take your lower back piece, and it's the same back piece as you would have used for the pleats. And we're going to run 2 long basting stitches across the top of this piece. After you've done that, then we're going to gather. So I like to do the first basting stitch at 1/4 inch and then the second basting stitch at 1/2 inch. Since the seam allowance is 3/8 inch, then it's making sure that my gathers are even when I go to stitch the bottom lower back piece to the yoke. Alright, so the 2 sets of basting stitches are done at the top here, and then I have the back yoke piece. We're going to take the bobbin threads from one side and pull them to gather this lower back piece to be the same width as the bottom raw edge of this upper back piece. Now we're going to connect the back yoke piece to the lower back piece. It's really important that your gathers are even, so make sure that you are separating them. And then if you want, you could place this lower back piece right on top and do a zigzag stitch across if you like having this raw piece right here, just for like some added texture. Or you can take the yoke piece and lay it on top of here and do right sides together and then clip it all the way down and sew it that way so that it is the raw edge is enclosed. So I decided to attach the lower back piece to the back yoke with the raw edge exposed, and now that those are connected, we can take the front piece and lay them right sides together just like we did in the other versions, and then clip up the sides and sew those together. So go ahead and clip down both of the sides and then sew both of the side seams, and then I think that is it for day 3.